As we mark the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this holiday weekend, our Martha Teichner offers a snapshot of a critical time in these United States.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
For 40 years, Martin Luther King Day has been a federal holiday.
Now is the time.
There he is in granite on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. But with his legacy and landmarks of the civil rights era no longer set in stone, we thought it might be a good time to look back at some events from the tumultuous decade between 1955 and 65.
This is the place where it happened.
And there you are.
Yep.
And meet people who lived them.
Once we die, then the civil rights generation leaders will be gone. There I am.
Arthenia Joyner became a prominent lawyer and a Florida state senator. But in February 1960, Joyner, 17 then, was one of 20 black high school students picked by the NAACP to take part in a sit-in at a whites-only lunch counter. So where exactly was the lunch counter?
It was right about here.
The old Woolworths in downtown Tampa, Florida, is just a gutted shell now. Where were you?
I was about here. Yeah.
Similar sit-ins by students took place across the South. I can't imagine not being kind of scared.
You know, there are things that are bigger than fear. Older folks thought that you're taking a heck of a chance you could get killed. Why are you doing this? Because we have a right to fight for respect and dignity, and we're going to do it. It's time for a change.
Joyner was a fifth grader in 1954 when the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in Brown v. Board of Education that segregated schools were unconstitutional.
It said that I was equal. I was entitled to have schools like the ones that the white kids went to. That inspired me.
1955, December 1st. Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger on a public bus in Montgomery, Alabama. What came next was the Montgomery bus boycott. Approximately 40,000 black Montgomeryans decided it was time. They walked or took black-owned taxis or carpooled rather than riding the bus for over a year.
90% at least of the regular Negro bus passengers are staying off the buses, and we plan to continue until something is done.
Their spokesman, a young, unknown Martin Luther King Jr.
We still advocate nonviolence, passive resistance, and
The man next to Dr. King. With Rosa Parks was their lawyer, Fred Gray. Just out of law school, 26 years old, he won the U.S. Supreme Court case that ended segregation on Alabama's buses, and by extension, all public transportation. The first of 4 civil rights cases he would win before the Supreme Court. Big ones, by the age of 35.
It was just taking one step at a time. And in my mind was to ultimately file a lawsuit would destroy everything segregated I could find.
Fred Gray, 95 now, winner of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, was the titan of the civil rights movement the public didn't see at the head of a march. He was in court. Without those lawsuits, would any of what we consider the civil rights movement achievements of that 10 years have been possible?
I don't think so.
What else was pushing change? Television.
I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
On the evening news, images of nonviolence being met with brutality.
Can we get a doctor?
Let us close the springs of racial poison.
The Civil Rights Act passed in 1964. Martin Luther King Jr. won the Nobel Peace Prize, but the confrontations didn't stop.
The screams of the marchers and the thud of the clubs and hoofbeats were carried by television to an unbelieving America and to a determined president.
Bloody Sunday. Selma, Alabama, March 7th, 1965, at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This was not the peaceful march from Selma to Montgomery to promote voting rights that King and other movement leaders had spent months planning, staying here with the Jackson family in Selma.
The world had a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I had an Uncle Martin that read me bedtime stories and offered me cookies.
Jawana Jackson was 4. Her father, a dentist, and her mother, a teacher, saved everything.
And this is the chair.
This is the chair.
Aware that they were preserving history. The house and its contents have been acquired by the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, and moved there.
This house, for a brief period of time, belonged to the world.
It opens to the public in June.
History is portable. The history and the message of the Jackson House can be told anywhere, but it must be shared.
Here, after Bloody Sunday, coordinating with President Lyndon Johnson and convincing the federal courts to let the march to Montgomery go ahead, consumed these men. On March 15th, as President Johnson spoke, 70 million Americans watched.
Really, it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice.
Martin Luther King Jr. and his inner circle from the Jackson living room.
And we shall overcome.
On March 21st, marchers set off from Selma protected, not beaten, by law enforcement. By the time they reached Montgomery 4 days later, there were 25,000.
We ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
There you
That's
are.
my mother.
Jawana Jackson and her mother among them. On the 6th of August, 1965, LBJ signed the Voting Rights Act, considered by many the crowning achievement of the civil rights era. Lately, attorney Fred Gray has watched as the Supreme Court chips away at it and other milestones he's devoted his life to making the law of the land.
Do you think the clock is turning back?
I think it has turned back, but we can't give up. We can't look at saying it's turned back and then say, well, I'll give up. We were arrested, we were put in jail, we suffered all those things, but we didn't stop.